Hi, everybody. Mitch Tannenbaum here. Thanks for joining me today for this week's security news update. In the security and privacy alert section, Microsoft is going to start pushing or promoting users to back up their data to OneDrive. That's probably okay. In fact, good thing for a lot of users. But for some users, some companies, that's going to be a problem. It could potentially even be a compliance problem, depending on the kind of data that you have. Um, and in addition, there's a size issue there. How much data, and maybe you have an unlimited amount of data based on your plan with Office 365. But for a lot of people, that's not the case. And depending on what it is you back up, and then you have to tell it what folders you wanted to back up. So if a user stores stuff in a non-standard folder, it won't get backed up, and on and on and on. So not a silver bullet, but if you have some questions about it, certainly reach out to us. In the CMMC front, one thing to bring up, some people are still dreaming that CMMC is going to go away. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't think it's going to go away, but you never know with this government. But Katie Arrington, who calls herself the mother of CMMC, she was the Chief Information Security Officer at the DoD's Acquisition and Sustainment Command during the first Trump administration, and she calls herself the mother of CMMC. She's now the acting CIO for the entire Pentagon, so I just don't think it's going away. I think that, and the problem is that, by the time you figure out that it's not going away, if you haven't done anything, you are definitely in trouble. In the software and hardware to check out area, GitHub has announced, it's kind of interesting, actually, kind of a cool feature. There were two features that were part of GitHub Enterprise, which is pretty expensive, that they've now built as standalone products, or will as of April 1st. One is called GitHub Secret Protection, which detects and prevents secrets from leaking for code that you've stored in GitHub. And if you follow the news, you know that's a big problem, people leaving secrets hard-coded in GitHub. That's going to be $19 a month per active committer. So depending on how many committers you have in the organization, could be pretty cheap. The other is called GitHub Code Security, which is kind of I guess I'd call it a low end, but maybe they probably argue with that. But anyway, it's a code scanning codes tool. So it's static code analysis, helps you identify and remediate vulnerabilities. That's going to be $30 a month per active committer. You can do one or both. So might not be a bad thing to, if you're a GitHub user, might not be a bad thing to consider. In the important issues, I guess I'd call this an interesting issue as opposed to important. The president has become a fan of crypto ever since he discovered he could make millions and millions of dollars off of crypto from selling it to his fan base and collecting the fees and other things. So, he said during the campaign that he would create a strategic crypto reserve or a strategic Bitcoin reserve. But the problem is he doesn't have the power to do that without Congress actually appropriating money. So what he decided to do is take crypto that's been forfeited by criminals and use that. Now, normally that money would go back to the victims. And it is true that, certainly potentially, some of that money that was forfeited was in the form of fines as opposed to, stolen money from victims. And you could maybe make a case that he could go off and use that money. But I would think there's certainly a community would say, gee, why don't you use that to pay down the debt rather than, hoarding it? On the other hand, if you bought, like someone I know, not well enough, unfortunately, didn't share with me, crypto that he bought at, $50 a coin years ago, there's been some price value increase, right? So, if you go off and say crypto is, I think it's like, Bitcoin in particular, like 80,000 a coin now. It's been as high as 100,000, but right now it's about 80,000. If it goes up to $1 million, well, then you're a really smart investor if you had 200,000 coins like the government does and you didn't sell them. So I don't know, but I'm thinking that there's going to be some victims that are not going to be very happy about not getting any of their money back and all going to the government. Also, there have been 3 VMware 0 days exploited in the wild. That anybody's still using VMware, given all their pricing shenanigans and reseller shenanigans over the last year. There are patches. It does require elevated privileges already, but it does lead to a sandbox escape, a virtual machine escape. So, if you're using VMware, and this applies to ESXi, Workstation, and Fusion, all the platforms, time to patch. In the legislative and legal, the first lady, and she's been historically been pretty quiet, but she is taking on the what's called the Take It Down Act. It's a revenge deepfake porn act that would require online providers to take down deepfake porn within 48 hours, social media in particular. She testified in front of a House committee in support of the bill to make it a federal crime to post what's now a new acronym. We didn't have enough. Non-consensual intimate content, which actually the acronym is NCII for non-consensual intimate imagery. This does not include, at least my read of it, does not include the very intimate nude images of her that have been circulating around the internet since 2015, 2016, because those were very consensual. She was paid to produce that content, and it's not fake. So, there are other laws potentially which she could use to take that stuff down, which would be basically the Copyright Act, because the people who are posting this stuff clearly don't own it. And my guess is neither does she, because she was a young model at the time, didn't necessarily understand things about ownership rights and content, and probably at the time, I don't even think she was a citizen. I think she was potentially a green card holder, so she didn't have a lot of leverage of the content folks who paid her to take those images. So I don't think any of that would take it down. But I mean, I think that she feels strongly about this, and certainly, I'm not going to argue with that one. That stuff needs to go away. If people are going off and posting intimate images of people that they didn't consent to them sharing, and lock them up for a long time, as far as I'm concerned. Screw this, take it down. I don't think that's enough. Anyway, so she's in support of that. I'm guessing that could pass. On the other hand, I also think that it probably will wind up in court, ultimately at the Supreme Court, because there's a lot of interesting questions about First Amendment rights and that sort of thing, which always come up. And the other thing is that, how does a social media platform know that the person who is requesting something got taken down? First of all, the Supreme Court's really clean definition of pornography is, I don't know what it is, but I'll recognize it when I see it. It's really hard for the social media sites to actually implement. That's number one. Number two, how do you know that the person who's asking you to take it down is their image? I could easily see this could get weaponized against people that people don't like very, very quickly. And I know the way that the DCMA works is, people will go off and tell YouTube to take down a competitor's content, and there's really no penalty. I mean, the penalties are really pretty lax in that. So we shall see what happens there. But I think the idea behind it is a good idea. I hope it passes, and we'll see. The DOJ plans to appeal the decision requiring warrants for cops to vacuum all cell phone data off of cell towers. I hope the courts uphold this verdict. The concept is known as what's called a tower dump. So they know that there was a robbery, at First and Main at 6:00. So they say, we want all the data from all the towers near First and Main, between 5:00 and 7:00. So you vacuum up a lot of data that way. 99.99% of the people that you're vacuuming up the data have nothing to do with the crime. Even assuming the crook was stupid enough to leave their cell phone on while they're committing a crime, which a lot of them are, there's no guarantee. So potentially there's nothing in that tower dump. And the courts seem to, side in that direction, that, it says, they would be authorized, even if they granted a warrant, which they didn't, they would be, authorizing the government to search for data of every cellular device of every single individual near a crime scene without any probable cause as to the individual. So, as I said, this is a haystack that may or may not even contain a needle. This follows an earlier decision by a different court that ruled that geofence warrants, which are basically the same kind of thing, are also illegal. So, the courts are kind of moving in the direction of privacy, which may or may not be what this administration would like. On the other hand, you know, uh, they may not have a lot of control over it. In the education department, this is an interesting item. It's a group of Bulgarians, actually, 30-something Bulgarians, were operating as Russian spies. They were kind of freelancers, I guess, would be the word you'd call that. If you have this thought that the spies come out of, look like the spies in James Bond movies, the answer to that is apparently not, at least not in this case. Um, and they're operating out of this rundown British seaside resort. They were doing honey traps. Honey traps are where you attempt to entice a mark into having sex, and then you blackmail them. So it's honey traps, a kidnapping, murder. It has all the intrigue of a James Bond movie, minus the sophistication. But apparently it worked for quite a while. In the breaches department, New Era Life Insurance compromised the data on 300,000, not only customers, but also agents, insurance agents, and business partners, and may have included claims data and diagnosis, treatment information. It took them 3 months to figure out that they really didn't know what the hackers got, which I think is really the point here. And, my question for you would be, if you got hacked, would you know what the hackers took? So if you need help with that, please reach out to us. The healthcare industry is definitely under attack. And for now, the response seems to be focused around, we hope it happens to somebody else. This week, a lot of these are smaller firms. United Back Care lost control of 19,000 patients' data. Another, again, that data included diagnosis and treatment. Artistic Family Dental lost control of data of about 4,000 patients due to a ransomware attack. It included names, addresses, insurance information, other stuff. And finally, the DuPage County Health Department in Wheaton lost control of information for patients of its communicable disease department. And I don't know what they do, but that probably includes sexually transmitted diseases as well as things like measles and stuff like that, which seems to be having an upswing. That was not a cyber attack. Interesting, the last one. It was a very low tech. During a building renovation project, was a bunch of paper records, and they don't know what happened to them. They think maybe they were destroyed, in which case it'd be okay, but they don't know. The city of Mission, Texas declares a state of emergency after a cyber attack. The hackers got all of the data held by the city. The city said their emergency services are still working, whatever that means, because reports are that cops can't even run a license plate. So I'm not sure what emergency service still working means. But the data stolen includes protected health information, civil and criminal records, and any other data the city has. So Texas has been a very target-rich environment lately. Hospitals, utilities, big oil. Among the municipalities are Matagorda County, McKinney, Coppell, and Richardson. Those are all counties and cities in Texas. They've all announced breaches. I don't know whether Texas is just damn unlucky or they got a problem there. Some of the daily blogs, unmanaged devices is really a hidden threat. People are letting people use their own personal devices, personal phones, personal PCs. In some industries that may not be legal, but in every industry that if you allow it, it certainly is a risk. And the question is, are you managing that risk effectively? There was a 2,600% increase in deepfake camera scans. This is where someone uses AI to create fake video and cause people to do things that they shouldn't do. One company lost $25 million to such a scam, but apparently these scams are getting better and better, easier and easier to do. And if you're not working to actively counter this threat, maybe you need to. Rob Joyce, who is the former cyber director at NSA and also at the White House, told Congress that he had grave concerns that the aggressive threats to cut CISA employees will have a devastating impact on cybersecurity and national security. We shall see what the president does, what Congress does, but depending on the level of cuts, what we're seeing is, in a lot of cases, the most senior, the most experienced people are the ones being cut because, in some cases, they're if you offer a buyout and they're close to retirement age, they might just take that buyout. Although the buyouts are pretty slim, in my opinion. But still, you lose enough key people and you're really screwed. So we'll see what happens there. But I think that's definitely a risk. And lastly, in the news bites, the president has apparently, there's no formal announcement, but the data is leaked, eased cyber attacks, offensive cyber on Moscow as he tries to cozy up to Putin to try to bring him to the bargaining table. That doesn't appear to be working at the moment, but he's still trying. North Korea is efficiently washing the $1.4 billion in crypto it sold. In fact, some reports say that they have washed all of it, making it difficult, not impossible to trace. After a UK backdoor request to Apple to give them backdoor to the Apple's encryption, it just said, Apple said that they removed the encryption for the UK users, but then they removed this is the UK, they removed the encryption guidance that they had been recommending, telling people to use encryption. So that's kind of interesting. Next, the feds seized 23 million in crypto directly linked to the LastPass breach from a few years ago. It'll be interesting to see whether or not this is crypto that the feds try to put in as crypto reserve or whether they give it back to the people who lost it. I'm sure if they don't give it back, there will be lawsuits over that because they lost $150 million, and that's not likely somebody's just going to ignore and pretend it didn't happen. And finally, a developer sabotaged their ex-employer's systems with a kill switch that said basically it's code, which wasn't very covert, not very well done. If my user account gets deactivated, then change everybody's password. It did do that, but they were able to track it back to this guy and they arrested him. So I'm sure that he will wind up paying for that to some degree or other. Until next time, thanks for listening, as always. And if we can do anything to assist you, please let us know. Take care.